All right, hello and welcome to BMA Violet Hour. This is actually our first BMA Violet Hour of the new year, 2020. So even though it's February, I'm going to say Happy New Year. My name is Tracy Beal. I am the manager of public programs here at the Baltimore Museum of Art. And for those of you who are tuning into BMA Violet Hour for the first time, this program we tend to produce twice a month. Usually it's on a Wednesday, and then usually it's around this time at 6 p.m. And what you can look forward to seeing is artist talks. We often host demonstrations as well as interactive activities that you can take part in from home virtually. So today, I'm really excited about this program. We are going to be celebrating one of our newer exhibitions, which is Stripes and Stars Reclaiming Lakota Independence. That exhibition is actually on view by appointment only. So you can go to the Baltimore Museum website and sign up for an appointment to see the exhibition in person. But before you go to the website, don't leave us. Before you go to the website, we have a great program set up for you today. And we're going to be talking to, or actually leading our program today is one of our curators and the curator of the exhibition. She is our assistant curator of Indigenous Art of the Americas, and she's also an enrolled member of the Yurok tribe of California. So I'm going to introduce you to Dare Turner. I'm going to bring her on screen. She's going to join me in just a moment. There you are. Hey, Dare.
Hi. So great to be here.
It's so good to see you. I'm so excited about tonight. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be so awesome. So I'll leave you to it. We're going to turn it over to Dare. I'm out of here.
Thanks, Tracy. So tonight we're going to have a really dynamic, awesome conversation with the Lakota artist named Sheldon Raymore. And after our discussion, we'll open it up to audience Q&A session. So feel free to put any questions you have in the comment section. But before we dive into the program and welcome our guest, I want to start by acknowledging the land we reside upon. The Baltimore Museum of Art and other like-minded institutions are thinking about the history of the land we inhabit. This is an ongoing process which will ultimately lead to a formal land acknowledgement. As a part of the BMA's ongoing broad range of initiatives related to diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion, the museum recognizes that we occupy land that generations of Indigenous people reside upon and have stewarded. The BMA is committed to engaging local historians, scholars, and most importantly, Indigenous people in the coming years to reflect on our obligations to and relationships with this land, its history, and its people. To learn more about land acknowledgements, we invite you to visit the BMA's website at artbma.org/stripes and stars. And I encourage you to take a moment after this lecture to reflect on the history of the land that you occupy right now. So I want to welcome Sheldon Raymore. We are so lucky that he can join us today. He is a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux Nation and is a multidisciplinary performance artist, actor, choreographer, cultural consultant, visual artist, and award-winning grass dancer, and so much more. So thanks, Sheldon, for joining us. Welcome.
Well,
Hi.
Hi, Hempi Wash Day. Good evening.
Oh, can you tell us what you just said?
Yeah, I said good evening, Hempi Wash Day. Sheldon Raymore Imachiapi. My name is Sheldon Raymore. Hohoju Oyanke Lakota Oyate Matahayalo. I come from the Cheyenne River Sioux people.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So let's switch it to the next slide. We're going to have a really dynamic conversation today, but before we dive in, I want to give an overview of the exhibition, Stripes and Stars Reclaiming Lakota Independence. So like Tracy mentioned, right now the museum just announced today that visitors can schedule an appointment to come in a small group of 8 people or fewer, and you can do that at artbma.org/appointment. And each group will have 90 minutes to see this exhibition and an amazing exhibition called A Perfect Power, Motherhood, and African Art. The Stripes and Stars Reclaiming Lakota Independence is open through March 28th, so you have a couple of months to make your way to the museum. So this exhibition was inspired by the work at the center of the screen here, A Girl's Bonnet. I first started working at the BMA in 2017 and had the amazing privilege to go into our storage room and just explore all of the different art we have that we care for. And I came across this bonnet and was really interested in it. It looked like I'd never seen a bonnet like this before in a Native American collection. So I started digging in and doing some research and learned that it was made by a Lakota person at the end of the 19th century. So this discovery was both surprising and really confusing in light of the time period it was created. The 1880s and 1890s were very challenging decades for the Lakota. They had just been forced onto the reservation by the US government, were no longer able to hunt buffalo, roam the plains, practice their own religion, and do sacred ceremonies. Furthermore, they suffered really bad losses in military conflicts, and in the 1890s, the Wounded Knee Massacre took place. So it's hard to reconcile all of that history with this bonnet. So the question at the core of this exhibition is driving at why would Lakota people use the American flag in their art? And though that question seems pretty straightforward, the answer is multi-layered and dependent on the context and presentation style of the flag. So the three major reasons are represented by the three artworks we see here. On the left, we have a self-portrait of a man named Sitting Bull, in which he is wielding the American flag like a weapon on the battlefield. And this is reflective of a movement in the pre-reservation period, so about 1820 to 1880, in which the American flag represented military conflict or the opposing force on a battlefield. So this warrior has taken it as a symbol of that demonstrates his military prowess. So that's theme one. Theme two is reflected in the bonnet in the center. And these sorts of works served a sort of protective purpose. Moms would create them for their kids and their family members, create works like this bonnet or beaded vests or beaded pants and boots that their children could wear, and that sort of attire would mark their kids as American. So while the beadwork identified the child as Lakota, because there are hallmarks to Lakota beadwork that are clearly present here, the flag affirmed the children's emerging American identity. So that's a second theme. Now, the third theme in the show is sort of the most complex and to me the most interesting. The flag was used as a sort of disguise to hide forbidden cultural practices. So like I mentioned before, the US government banned sacred ceremonies like the Sundance in 1882, which was a really devastating loss for the Lakota. However, the time of year that the Sundance normally took place conveniently coincided with the 4th of July. So the Lakota people co-opted the 4th of July to serve their own purposes. And by showing a profusion of American flags and doing events like, formal readings of the Declaration of Independence, they were essentially given a pass to do cultural activities that were normally banned, like parades, puberty ceremonies, dances, giveaways, and just a bunch of different festive activities. So the storage bag you see on the right there points to that history and may have been used in a 4th of July celebration. So with all those themes in mind, let's take a look at the next slide, which will show us a quilt pouch from the late 19th century. So here we have a leather bag decorated with both beads and dyed porcupine quills. And now I want to lean into Sheldon's expertise. Can you help us puzzle out why Lakota people started using quills as an artistic medium?
Absolutely. I would say that definitely when you look at the porcupine quills, those were the original decorative adornment prior to colonization, prior to Europeans coming to this continent. And so what you're seeing there is actually dyed. These porcupine quills are then plucked from the porcupine and then dyed in the various colors. So in this case, red. And then they are actually sewn onto this medicine bag that this bag that you're seeing right now. And it's woven back and forth by each quill. It took several quills. Just looking at this image, it looks like it's maybe over 100 porcupine quills that were flattened, dyed, and then sewn onto this piece to create those stripes. And what was told to me is that the stripe resembles the red road, which is the good red road, which is a good way of life that we walk. And so that's why you're seeing that stripe that's going across this entire bag. That's what that represents. But you're seeing the mix of beadwork, which is, of course, beads are newer. You're seeing that on there as well.
So is there a special significance to the porcupine?
Absolutely. The porcupine, in one of our creation stories, the porcupine, no one ever thought to use porcupine quills, to adorn and the whole process of how that worked. But we have a creation story about how the double woman brought the porcupine quill and this quill work, and she instructed our women how to use the porcupines and actually the quills, and how to adorn them onto sort of like a coat of armor and protection and medicine. And not just medicine like I'm saying like you take a pill, but medicine in the sense that like think of a suit of armor, and all the creation that goes into that, and the prayer and the energy and all of that that would go into that specific thing that they were creating to protect the people.
That's amazing. Do you ever work with quills yourself? I already know the answer to this, but
I do actually. I was fortunate enough. My mother always made porcupine quill earrings. My sister still does those to this day. And then myself, I do some quill work in some of the art pieces that I do. And the thing with quill work is that it is very time consuming, because just the preparation of the quill in itself, meaning like the dyeing process, and then the actual application of it takes so much time compared to just doing beadwork, where the beads are already provided to you, they're already in the colors you want, and then you just go ahead and like add them onto the to whatever project it is that you're working on.
so I think you put together a video breaking
I
down
did.
the quill work process. So let's pull that up. It's going to take a second here because we have to switch screens. Great. So can you walk us through what we're going to see in this video?
Absolutely. So here's a porcupine. They're so cute, aren't they?
Yeah, they're
And so you got to remove the quills from the porcupine. Most of the time they're dead. Unfortunately, on the side of the roads, they get hit. And so then what you want to do is you want to so to just show you they are all different sizes. And then here you want to take the quills and then you want to soak them in detergent, which will remove the porcupine's natural oils from it. And then so you want to soak that, make sure you get all those oils out really good, because like the oils, if you don't, the oils will make them kind of harder to work with, and they won't take to the dye. So you want to make sure that you rinse them out really good, and then you can go ahead and dye them. And then once the quills are clean, then you can put them into the dye, and whatever color that you want to work with, you put them into that dye, and then that dye will attach to that quill. So in this case, we have here we're showing you blue, but I want to just warn you that the dye does still continue to bleed out. And so, this got on my hands. This was blue specifically. And so you want to make sure you rinse them out really good. And then finally, once that's done, then you rinse them. And then now you want to go for your best, thickest quills. So here we have an example of a red one, right? And it's really thick and it's really long. And so then you want to go ahead and be able to cut the ends off so that you can like flatten that. And that's going to cover a lot of ground, which is great. That's what we want. We don't want the little skinny ones because like it takes more quills to, and also when you look at the aesthetic of the actual finished piece, you don't want that like, thin ones, thicker ones, you don't want that look. You want all like the whatever substrate you're working on, you want it to have like the thinnest, the thickest as possible. So here we go with this where we flattened the quills. And in this case, I'm using a pliers because we're using chemicals here. So I wouldn't put them in my mouth. So in this case, like when you go to wrap them, you wrap the quill. I would use, like a pliers, a needle nose pliers, and then you wrap it onto what you're working with. And then it's sort of woven into it. And then one by one, you go ahead and you can probably get like maybe 2 rows of wrapping from just that one porcupine quill. So if you can look at the back of this, you can see all those quills that it takes in each and every color to make that happen and to decorate that image.
It seems so labor intensive.
It is.
More time to do quill work?
Yeah, I do some in some of my art pieces that I do quill work. Earrings, obviously I do some porcupine quill work. The thing is that porcupine quills, again, it's so much more labor intensive and there's so much more work and effort, and it is a traditional form of art that we would do. But I tend to use a lot of more of the contemporary beads and things like that, just because I don't have to go through all the prep time and all of the, I guess sort of like all that extra work. Yeah.
So let's go over to the next image, which will be a wheel. Here we are, we're back. So I saw the wheel in your video and I see it here. Can you help me understand what is the significance of this wheel?
Absolutely. The medicine wheel is a sacred, I guess I would want to say it's a sacred emulation of the 4 sacred directions, which are the 4 winds. And those would be north, south, east, west, right? So north, east, southwest. And the sacredness of those, because when we go to pray, we always pray to those 4 sacred directions that created, I guess, the accesses of earth. And so that's why they are so sacred and they're in our creation stories. And so what you're seeing here is these 4 colors, right? Like, why are they those colors? Black, white, yellow, and red. Each of those colors were given to each of those directions. And so what you're seeing right there is a form of a sacred medicine wheel, we call these.
That is
And
super cool.
yeah, I mean, in our creation stories, the Lakota, we used to live in the underworld, and then I think you're gonna have me tell a story of that coming up. But just to give you a little bit of a taste of it, is just to let you know that each of these colors is assigned to each of the 4 directions.
Let's dive into the creation story. I want to hear it.
Sure. So we lived in the underworld as Lakota people before we came out of Wind Cave in the Black Hills of South Dakota. We lived in the underworld, and there was she was one of our people. She was human, and she married. She was so beautiful that she actually married a god, which was the wind. And so she was her kids were considered Wakan, which means sacred. And so her husband was sacred and her kids were sacred because they were half godlike, sacred. And so then what happened was that her kids, when she birthed them, they were already destined to make this journey and create the four directions of the world. So she was human herself. We say Pte Oyate means she was from the Buffalo Nation people. And so, as our role of Buffalo Nation people, we were to serve the gods. We were not gods ourselves. Very special, very different thing in those times. And so this, we're talking thousands of years ago. I mean, we're talking like before, like, the world had like a flood, and like, there's all these times. We're a very old race of people as Lakota people. So she was supposed to she birthed these children, which were her four sons, and they went on to make the four sacred directions, and their father was the wind. And so being the wind, that was her husband. She was supposed to just birth these children into this world, and they were going to go about and this and that. And so what happened is we had a very trickster type person. His name was Iktomi. And he used to be Ksa, which was the god of wisdom. And so he should have known better. But what he did was he actually played a trick on them. And he decided that he was going to tell the parents that he's going to give her this medicine that will make her more beautiful, so beautiful, like she would be like godlike. So she went and sat in the moon's place, which was, moon was already married to the sun. And so she went and sat next to the sun. And Great Spirit didn't like that. He didn't like that at all. There was some punishment that would happen right after that. I mean, the moon used to evolve around the sun at that time, and then he got so upset that he cast her out, and she gets caught by the earth, so from now on, that's why the moon evolves around Earth in our solar system. And then also, that was one of the first divorces that sort of happened. But what also happened was the wind, Inugite, her name was Face, because she was so beautiful, right? She gave you a much beautiful face. She got kicked out on top of the earth, and she had to live on top of the earth. And so she became double-faced woman. So double-faced woman, she had on her left side of her face, very beautiful face, but on the right side, very ugly, because she became like of that duality, and how she behaved. So she got kicked out on top of the earth. So did Iktomi. Iktomi got kicked out on top of the earth. He as for playing tricks and doing what he did. And then her mother and her father, they also got kicked out of the underworld, and they were cast on top of the earth. So now that they were the first family of Lakota people that would be on this earth. And actually later on in life, hundreds of years later, we would learn from them, and they actually helped us. But so when you talk about the Ocheti Shakomi, that means the 7 council fires of the Lakota Nation, and they were the first. So later on, we're a very old people, like I said, but she taught the women of our tribe, of our nation, the art of quill working and working with porcupine quills and dyeing them. And so we had a women's society called Double Woman Dreamer. And if you dreamt of this woman who still is sacred, human of us, then she would instruct you on how to use these porcupine quills.
Amazing. I see we have some questions in the comments here about quill work. We'll get to them at the Q&A, so we see you, and we'll hopefully have time to answer all of them. Thank you so much for that amazing story. I feel like I understand the world better now. So let's take a look at the next slide, and we're going to start thinking about quill work and beadwork together. So I see on the right, I think I recognize that headband from your portrait at the beginning. Can you tell us about that piece, the different colors, and is that a mirror in the middle?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's So I do the grass dance, which is a contemporary. Well, I mean, I do a contemporary style of the grass dance. But what you're seeing, I mean, one of our main pieces that we wear is our headband, and this is a headband that I designed, and I worked with a quilt worker who is a friend. And she actually made this. And so the mirror you're seeing in the middle of it is to deflect any bad energy or any bad thoughts or anything that somebody might project upon myself. That mirror deflects it and sort of cleanses it. And so that's what you're seeing right there, why there's a mirror in the middle. But I found it very important as a contemporary dancer, to have the banding on that, which is the Swarovski crystals that you see, because I love combining the contemporary and the traditional forms of artwork and combining them together. So each of these quills that you see here, there's many different colors. I used red, orange, yellow, green, blue, white, which is the natural color of the quill, and they actually bleach it to get it white, in this headband, and there's a little bit of beadwork in it.
I love that piece, but I want some time to talk about beadwork too. I see a piece in the center on the left, a flag roundel, and I think, do I see combination quills and beads on the other pieces in that picture?
Yeah.
Super
Yeah.
cool. So tell us about those pieces. Did you make them, and what's up with them? What's their story?
So to the very far left of the image, you'll notice right there, there is that is a awl, which the awl is what is used to puncture through the hides when we're sewing clothing or whatever. And so a woman would always have this. This was one of her essential items that she would have. She would always have a awl, a knife, and a fire starter kit. And so those are just the three common sets of tools that a woman would carry. And so I replicated, as there, you can see on the very top there, there's some white designs. Those to me are buffalo tracks. And I created that. I made that all case right there, and I added some yellow feathers to it just to give it some pizzazz. But this is my own interpretation and my own vision, I guess, as an artist, of what I wanted this to look like. So I created this, and then I wrap stitched all the way around the dangles of the very bottom of it. But the owl in itself is only like 6 inches. So everything else is decorative. And you see the flags in the inside, just the incorporation of what we do as even contemporary artists. This piece specifically, I incorporated the flags in it because my brother is, he served in the military. So in honoring him, I created this piece, and I usually only wear it around, 4th of July or Veterans Day, like just to honor him,
Oh, I think that's a great segue to the next piece, which I hope to have your sort of attentiveness, your attentive eye towards. So let's look at that. It's a vest coming our way any second. There we go. Awesome. So like what you were just saying, we're 4th of July, Veterans Day. This piece here most likely would have been worn on the 4th of July, and both sides are fully beaded. So actually it's pretty hefty. And that's something I find so interesting in the literature. People talking about in the early reservation days, children had fully beaded outfits that would weigh like 20 pounds on a 4-year-old. So the idea of like walking or dancing may be kind of impeded by all of that weight as a small kid. But I want to pick apart the way that this is constructed. So maybe our viewers can see that there are rows. Can you help us understand what stitch is being used, and like how many beads do you think were in this object? I couldn't estimate that. I'd love to hear your estimate though.
Well, yes, they are like suits of armor for sure. When you look at the Europeans, and when they would go to war, they would wear these like, silver, suits of armor. And in our way, these are what these are. They are suits of armor. And so they're beads of protection. They're beads of blessings. They're beads of love that the person would be wearing these would get from the maker. And so in here, oh my gosh, there's got to be thousands and thousands and thousands of beads that are here, rows and rows and rows. This beaded vest must have took someone maybe at least like 2 months maybe to make.
Wow, there's so much there's such like a labor of love here when they're thinking about either making it for their loved ones or making it for a giveaway. There's a lot of work that goes into every single one of these pieces. So when we're thinking about this transition from quill work in the early, and for all of time, all of Lakota history up until like a transition happening in the mid to late 19th century to beadwork, why did that transition happen, and where did the beads come from?
Well, the beads were brought over from Europe. And what happened was our people found that, what happens over time with quill work is that it crackles. The dyes, keep in mind, we're not using contemporary dye. That's why I use the needle nose pliers, because like I don't want those chemicals in my mouth. I don't want to ingest those. So they were using organic dyes, which was like, onions to make yellow and different things like that. So they tend to fade over time. They tend to crackle. And what we found with beads is, beads last forever.
Yeah,
We can find somebody buried from 200 years ago and the beads are still intact, so
that
that's
is wild. Well, I think we have another video, so we're going to have a bit of a transition as we pull that up, but you are doing some beadwork in the video, so let's transition over to that,
okay.
and I'll take just a second.
So those are my baby moccasins.
Too cute. I can't get over it. Oh. So walk us through what we see here.
Sure, what you're seeing right now. So I tend to work a lot with contemporary tri-cut beads. They're glass, they're sparkly, and they're really pretty. So that's why I tend to work with them. But what you have to do is just string up the so you take some beading thread and then you string through your needle, which can take people a long time. But I've been doing
You're
it
a
for
pro.
long. Yeah, I'm a pro, so it doesn't take me that long. But sometimes when I've taught beading classes, it takes people a while just to like string the the needle. So here you are with a strung needle, and then what you want to do is you want to puncture through the leather. They do sell like leather glover needles where it's like they're little Sharpie, like little knives that can actually cut through puncture the leather really easily. So you can do those. But in this case, this leather it took to the beading needles very easily. This is a size 12 needle that I'm using. And then you want to string up your beads. And you want to count them too, because depending on your rows, whatever you decide to do, that's how many beads. So I think in this case, I'm stringing up like maybe like 9 beads, one at a time, depending on the design. And then what you want to do is, as you see there, they're the different colors, depending on your pattern. And then what you want to do is like once you've strung those through, then you want to go through to the other side. Make sure your string is all the way out, the knotted on the other end, and then you want to go ahead and puncture through the leather to create your first row. And following that is going to be your entire row.
Man, I actually took one of your beading circle classes, and I was probably one of the people you were thinking about that took like way too long just put the string on the needle. So, but yeah, it's really challenging work. And you think about the people that would do this for decades, and like just having that skillfulness is really interesting. What do we see here? Oh my God, this is amazing.
Well, this is a vest that I was gifted, and you can see the intricacy of the design. And this is considered lazy stitch. and there's nothing lazy about it. As you just saw me demonstrating the stringing up the different amount of beads and then applying them to the substrate that you're going to work on. It takes a lot of time and patience. So you can't be in a rush when you're doing this. And again, like I said before, there is nothing lazy about lazy stitch. You can see all the stitching behind the garment, all the rows that it took to add all these beads onto it. You're going through row by row by row, and then color by color by color. And as you see here, these are my moccasins, and in these moccasins you can see that they're coming apart and they need repairing, but they are sewn all the way through and they are stitched all the way through. So it's going to take me some time to tack those beads back down, and then also reapply other beads, because that just happens in the nature of when you wear these pieces. They're not just like for decorative purposes. We're actually wearing them and using them. And so I've danced at powwows for several times, different parts of the country, on different grounds. I've danced on pavements, I've danced on grass, I've danced on different rocks. And so you see here, this is another example of another style called applique. And those applique, they were there was many stitches that went into that. And again, going back to my baby moccasins, these are about 9 beads by row that were sewn onto this pair of moccasins. And I was fortunate enough to have my mother agree to part with these and let me have them. So these are my baby moccasins, and I've always loved the stars from since I was a little baby. As you can see here, I guess I was destined, but they're little stars that were beaded upon these. So
Who made that for you? Was that your mom?
That's a good question. My mom never said who it was, if it was a relative or where she got them from. It was just something that that you're causing me to want to go ask that question.
They're so cute. I just can't get over them. So I think we're ready to go back and take a look at some boots that are in the show. So
Okay.
this will come up in a second. But do you have, oh, here we go. I remember you saying that this was one of your favorite pieces. Well,
It is, because I think that this showcases us as Lakota people as a living culture. That we're not, we are a people who are still resilient, and we're still here. And during times of being, you can go back onto the reservation and we have Indian rodeos, where like that's a big draw, where these Indian folks, Lakota people, we've accustomed to the modern era, and boots like these are an example of that.
I love that. Are you hearing me okay, Sheldon? Oh, here we go. I'm back. I love that. I think that these are so interesting because one of my favorite details here is you can see the wear on the boot, on the heel of the boot. You can see that a little kid wore these and walked around, and it just is so interesting to think about the life of these objects, and also thinking about the way that Native people have sort of changed with the times. Like maybe, and probably a lot of people here are surprised to hear that this cowboy boot would have been created or sort of redone by a Native artisan. They think maybe those ideas are incompatible, but they're not. So that's really interesting. What about boots today, cowboy boots today? Do Native people wear them at the rodeo? Are there special powwow dances?
Yeah, absolutely. There's the hat and boot special at powwows where they dance in these and they wear a cowboy hat, and then they wear these type of boots, and they go out there and they compete against one another, and there's like a whole special at powwows during our dances. But one thing I would also like you to know is that in the old days, which is from my grandparents' days, my grandfather would talk about how they used their boots as their pillow when they would go to sleep at night around the campfire. So I mean, yeah, it's
That doesn't seem like a super comfortable pillow, but that is interesting. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at the last image from the show. This is our star of the show. This horse mask is in the middle of the gallery and is at horse height. And there was so much work, labor that went into that. I was researching how many hands tall would a horse have been in the plains in the 19th century. So all of that math is on view in the galleries. But what I really love about this mask, something that I didn't notice when I was just reading about it, this was a loan from the Fenimore Art Museum in Cooperstown. So when I first was exposed to this mask, it was mostly through pictures. Then I went and saw it in person, and we were lucky enough to get the loan for the exhibition. And I was walking around in the space with someone, and they asked me, why are the flags backwards on one side of the mask? So I was thinking like, well, how would this mask have been used? It would have been worn in a parade when the horse was moving. And so if we think about if that horse, if there was a flag flying above that horse's head, this would be the orientation we would see it in. So I loved this nod towards the movement and the life of the horse. But I know that you have some insight on why that it's mirrored. Can you tell us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we have to take into consideration that the Lakota traditional belief system is that when you are born, there's another you that is created up in the universe, in the cosmos. So many times you'll see in our beadwork, we have one image that represents our time here on Earth, but there's also that reflection up in the cosmos. So you'll oftentimes see that mirrored back and forth, and that sort of fluidity, but it's an honoring of that, an acknowledgement of that, we are here on Earth, but we also have the cosmos too. And when we pass on to the other side, when we go to the spirit world, you are in the cosmos. So oftentimes you'll see that in our beadwork designs.
I love that. What else do you see here? I see some pluses and some
Yeah.
triangles. Can you unpack that symbol for us, both of those?
Sure. Well, it looks like a plus. Some people have often said, like, is that Christianity and their influence and with the crosses? But actually, that's an old Lakota design of the stars, and that was an interpretation of the star. I think oftentimes because America, we look at the U.S. flag and it has that five-pointed star, but before that, we use the cross, which is the four directions and the four stars. So I think it's important to acknowledge that here, and you're seeing it for firsthand. Is that that cross, which would represent the stars.
And when we think about beadwork, it totally makes sense that a cross would be much more feasible when we're thinking about these vertical rows rather than a five-pointed stars on the diagonal. So in the flag itself, you can actually see little crosses, little white crosses to represent stars.
Mhm.
So that is awesome. I want to give the chance to answer questions. We have so many in the chat here, so I'm going to look through here.
Also realize that in this specific image of the horse mask, those triangles that you're seeing right there, those represent mountains. So oftentimes, whoever the artisan was that was making this piece, they were thinking about a map maybe. And so what you're seeing there is like the blue mountains right there. Those could have been the Black Hills of South Dakota. It just depends on the artisan and what territory that they were living in at that time.
I love that. There's such a layered history. I feel like we need so many interpretations. I wish I could write like 1,000-word essay about every object. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that in our galleries, but we are. I'm so glad we can have events like this to kind of unpack what stories can be elaborated on. So
we need another show.
Yeah, we need exactly. So I'm looking over at the questions. I see Veronica has asked, what would have removed the oil from porcupine quills before Dawn soap was available?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, oftentimes they would soak them and boil them. And so if you can imagine in the old days, we didn't have iron kettles and we did not have electric stoves. So what you would have done was they used the stomach from the buffalo, and they would place hot stones inside of that stomach, and once inside of that stomach, that would make the water very hot and boilable, and then they would soak the porcupine quills in that. So that was how they used to do it prior to colonization.
Wow, that is fascinating. Kind of building on that, Susan asked, did I infer that you were not using chemical, if you were not using chemical dyes, you would flatten the quill between your teeth?
Yes.
Yeah.
You would place them in between your teeth and you would flatten it out like that.
What kind of stuff? You said onions would have been used to dye. What other sorts of
Like yellow, if you wanted to use choke cherries tend to make them more like purple. If you wanted like a reddish purple color, then you'd use choke cherries. Yeah, so the different berries acquired in the plains area is what they would use for the dyes of the porcupine quills.
Okay, awesome. That I feel like I'm learning so much. We have lots of questions. Okay, is Sheldon sitting in front of the moon, or is that Earth? Is there significance? Are you seeing Earth?
Well, behind me, that's the Earth, but it's the view from the moon to
I
Earth.
love that. It ties into the whole creation story.
It does.
I love that.
It's actually it's a panel that is a soundproof panel, so that when I do these type of interviews, my neighbors aren't going crazy. You know.
I need one of those for my baby. Okay, cool. So we see, were the Lakota, oh, that one went away. Were the Lakota peoples the only natives who used this subversive use beadwork? So like use the flag subversively, I think is what Laura's getting at.
No, I would say that many tribes, when the flag came to their territory, it was a symbol of peace. You know, that we are not only assimilating, but like we come in peace, and so we're accepting the Americans into our country. And so I think that there's many different tribal nations that use the flag or have incorporated the flag into their adornments, or but it was a symbol of peace.
I love that. And one thing I'll add to that is in terms of 19th century, Lakota's use of the flag far outpaces any other tribes by a long shot. And what's interesting is that the Crow tribe was closely aligned with the US government. They were partners, and yet we don't see the flag in Crow beadwork from the same time period. It's like a 1% as much as the Lakota. So that's a really interesting story to unpack. And as we move forward in time, things change. Other people incorporate flags into their beadwork. But that was a great question. Okay, Ellen is asking, are the headband and the piece demonstrating lazy stitch using Native American church colors?
No. For my personal one, no, they're not Native American church colors. I'm not a member of the Native American church. I tend to practice specifically the traditional Lakota ceremonies and way of life. I am not a church member, but I chose those colors because they were watercolors, and then also specific to my band that I come from as Ohenumpa. I'm sorry, Tukettle is the Lakota way of, when I say Hohoju Oyanke Lakota Oyate Amatahayelo, is that I come from the Cheyenne River Sioux people, and my colors of my specific band of Lakota that I come from, we use those colors, greens. The red, orange, and yellow are more fire colors, but the green and the blue is specific to my band that I come from.
I love that. Hopefully that answers your question, Ellen. What else do we have? Elaine asks, how similar or different is this bead and porcupine work from other Native American groups?
How different? Just living here on the East Coast, I've seen these Indians here work with wampum, and it's like that purple and white shell, and that, you know, that's signature to them. I mean, if you go down to the southwest of the United States and they work with turquoise, you know, that's specific to their nations. And then so yeah, the shell work is different, you know, and then but with porcupine quill work, that's specific to our people. That's what we were known for. And I mean, the Cheyennes do it, you know, so do the Arapahoes, so do the Blackfeet, many of the Plains nations. We all did that style of adornment, which was porcupine quill work. So just knowing that it's all regional.
Yeah, like my tribe, we use dentalia and abalone shells, and so it's really based on what's available, you know, around you. And there were really sophisticated trade networks, so we can find dentalia from where my tribe grew, you know, lived all the way across the United States. So it's not to say you were locked into materials just around available just around you, but that's what you see most of the time is
Right. Well,
what's
I can probably guarantee that my tribe contacted your tribe to trade, you know, for those dentalium, because when you look at some of our old pictures, the women, they're wearing, you know, beautiful dentalium earrings and, you know, chokers, and so we definitely were doing trade, you know, back and forth.
absolutely way before anyone else was even on this continent. So there was really sophisticated networks of relationships.
Before Amazon.
Before Amazon, it was maybe not Prime. It wouldn't get there in 2 days, but you know, it's more ethical, I guess. Okay, here we see. Let's see what else we have. Laura asks, do other tribes use same or different techniques? We've kind of touched on that a little bit, but like the lazy stitch, do other tribes use the lazy stitch?
Yeah, absolutely. I think nowadays you can see many different nations using the lazy. I mean, there's different types of beadwork you can do. There's the lazy stitch, which is the one that you're seeing on this horse mask. There's the applique, which is done with 2 needles. There's like the medallion beading, which is done in a circle. I mean, there's so many techniques, like even peyote stitch, which is what they call when like you beat around like a circle. So there's so many techniques, and I would say that across the board, many indigenous people nowadays use different. We all share the beadwork techniques now.
I see another question from Susan. Could you please explain the grass dance and its purpose?
Sure, the grass dance. Well, it's an old dance. It was actually brought to our Lakota people in the 1860s, and it was brought from the Omaha Nation, and it was a gift that was given to our people. And the dance in itself was the first dance that was done in an arena, because when you go to the plains, the grass is so tall that they had to flatten this grass down and get rid of the snakes and get rid of the bugs, you know, and chase them away and the critters. So these dancers were actually warriors, and they would go into the plains, and they would dance down this grass, like flatten the grass and make the area like an arena in a sense, so that the rest of the people could come in and dance. So that's the original I guess explanation of how the grass dance came about, but also how it was gifted to our plains people. So it's more of a plains style of dance, but nowadays it's so contemporary that like many different nations that didn't do that dance style, they now do it.
That's so interesting. Would you say that's true of a lot of different powwow dances where it started specific to one region and then kind of spread out?
Absolutely, yeah. I think as indigenous people, you know, we're kind of more pan-indigenous nowadays, especially in urban settings. We give and we exchange, and so there's these you know, this sort of agreements, these treaties that are happening, and you're seeing nation to nation, and so that's why you see a lot of tribes that maybe not was not traditional to their tribe to do these powwow dances, but now they do them.
I love that. Do you compete? Do people generally just compete in one? So you're a grass dance specialist and not anything else?
Well, I started out fancy dancing, so and that was from the Ponca tribe. You know, I started out fancy dancing, but then I've also transitioned into grass dancing. And for me, grass dancing just felt right. like it was a natural ability, and also just the energy of the dance and the tempo and everything. It just felt right for me. So that's why I tend to do that dance. But I come to find out that my grandfather used to do the same dance. So maybe it's in the.
Yeah, it's like something special about your line that's just dialed into the grass dance.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. Any other thoughts or any other thoughts out there that people want to share on Facebook? Any other questions? I think we've gotten through the full list of questions. I'm just going to scroll up and make sure I didn't miss anything. Or if I missed your question and you want it answered, ask it again. That's totally fine.
We're gonna actually go to the flag song, Lakota flag song, and I just wanted to let everybody know, the viewers, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me, BMA. This has been amazing. I mean, I'm honored to have been asked to be a part of this whole program, and so we're gonna kind of close out with this flag song, and it's a Lakota flag song. And so understand that the flag was brought to us after, especially after the Battle of Little Bighorn. We really started incorporating the flag into our stuff, into our way of life. But this flag song, they wrote, these singers, and you have to imagine, like over 100 years ago, developed this song. And this song is about the flag and its significance to the flag, and about the president, and they call them the Great White Father, which is the president of the United States. And so how we incorporated this flag into our song. And it's the first song that, after we do a grand entry at a powwow, which is a large gathering where hundreds of our dancers will come together during the summer seasons, we honor the United States flag, because we are Lakota. We do come from this territory. We are the indigenous people of this land, but we still acknowledge that we are American as well. And that didn't happen until the 70s, 1970s. So this song is really singing about that acknowledgement about the flag.
And who sang the song? Did you say already in this recording?
And well, we have different singers that sing the song, different tribal nations, but if most likely it's probably the Porcupine singers.
Love it. Well, I think we're ready to transition to the song. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this amazing event, and I'm going to give it away to the singer now.
Lakota flag song. Hey ya, hey, hey ya, hey, hey ya, hey ha ya, hey ha, hey yo, hey, hey yo, hey, hey yo, hey ha, hey yo, hey, hey yo. Way ha yo hey yo ho, way ha yo hey yo, ay Tronka shela ya, trawa pa ke ha, oe hanke shne, e na jing telo ay. Yochlate ya, oya teke ha, weche chajing tacha, wecha muelo, ay, hey ya, hey, hey ya, hey ya. Hey ha yo hey ha, hey yo hey yo hey, hey ha yo hey ha, hey ha yo hey yo, hey ha yo hey yo, hey ha yo hey yo, hey. Hey yo hey ha, hey yo hey hey ha yo hey yo, hey ha yo hey yo, hey. Tronka shelaya, trawa pakea, oe hanke shne, ena jinktelo hai. Io chlate ha, oya teke ha, weche chajinktacha. Lechamuelo, aye.